We continue now at the top of Daf Pedal and Mesechet Sanhedrin. This is Sanhedrin Daf 84b. This is the beginning of the 10th parak of Mesechet Sanhedrin. The Mishnah says, Elohein hanechnok, in the following are the people who are punished with the punishment of chenek, of strangulation. Hamake ovev v'imo, one who strikes his father or his mother. V'gonev nefesh mi Yisrael, if somebody steals a soul from Israel, meaning to say if somebody kidnaps. V'zakin mamre al pi bezdin, if you have a zakin mamre, somebody who rebels, a scholar, elder who rebels against the court. V'navi hashek, on a false prophet. V'hamisnabi b'shem avodas kochavim, and somebody who has a prophecy in the name of avodah zara. V'habo aleishes ish, and somebody who has relations with a married woman. V'zomame bas kohen uvoalo, let's say you have the daughter of a kohen who commits adultery. So if there are edim zomamin in such a case, meaning they testified she committed adultery, but it turned out they were false, they were edim zomamin, they would get chenek. And also the person who she committed adultery with, that man, he will get chenek as well. And Rashi explains, Elohein hanechnokin mamre al pi bezdin, that's the case of zakin mamre, kagon mamrim hayisamim Hashem. It's like the pasuk says, mamrim hayisamim Hashem, means shemisarev al pi bezdin hagadol shebelishkas hagazis. It means he's refusing the ruling of the bezdin hagadol of the Sanhedrin in the lishkas hagazis that's by the Beis Hamikdash. V'zomame bas kohen, and again the edim zomamin by a case of bas kohen. Afal pi shehem hayu mechayven osas reifa. Now even though they're trying to make her get sreifa because the bas kohen shazinsa herself, she gets sreifa, eini don and ela b'misa shayu mechayven leboel, but they're going to get the punishment that they tried to give to the man and not to her. V'hainu chenek, and that's a punishment of strangulation. Kishar bo aleishes ish, like any other case of a person who has relations with a married woman, kid mefarish krahiti saref, like the pasuk says, she's the one that gets punished with burning with sreifa. V'lo bo alam, but not the man that she's with. V'zomamen, also not the edim zomamin. V'zomamen, rather yalfinan mikasher zamam lasos la'achiv. When it comes to the zomameho, when it comes to the edim zomamin, so that we learn what they were trying to do to the brother, meaning to him, la'achiv v'lo la'achos, so to his brother and not to his sister. And that's how we learn out that edim zomamin, they get the punishment they're trying to give to him and not the punishment they're trying to give to her. Ubo Allah, and again the man that she has adultery with. Rashi notes, B'nesua bas kohen kamari, we're talking here about a bas kohen who's married, avol arusa, but if she's just betrothed, so then boala b'skila, then actually the boala, the person she commits adultery with, is going to be punished with skila, with stoning. And the Gemara says, Make aviv v'imo minolan, if somebody strikes his father or his mother, from where do we know that the punishment is chenek? Dechsiv, because it's written in the pasuk, Make aviv v'imo mos yumas, it says when somebody strikes his father or his mother, he will surely die. V'chol miso amur b'torah stam ein ala chenek. Anytime it says miso in the Torah, it's referring to chenek, so therefore we say that again, somebody who strikes his father or his mother, the punishment is chenek, is strangulation. But the Gemara continues, Eimad dekotel le miktal, but maybe we should say that the pasuk doesn't simply mean to wound the father or mother, it means he has to actually kill his father or his mother to get the death penalty. And the Gemara says, can that really enter your mind? Katal chad b'sayif v'yavav b'chenek, you kill a regular person, the punishment is sayif, the punishment is beheading. And so you're going to get a more lenient punishment when one kills his father, he's going to get chenek, that cannot be. And so therefore it has to be makayava v'imo, simply means wounding his father or his mother. But the Gemara continues, well, that argument works according to the one who says that strangulation is more lenient than beheading. But according to the one who says that strangulation is stricter, so then on the contrary, we could say that if you kill a regular person, you get sayif, and if you kill your father or your mother, then the punishment is going to be the stricter punishment of chenek. So what are you going to say? From where do we know that make aviv v'imo in the pasuk means to wound one's father or his mother? Maybe it actually means again to kill one's father or his mother. And so the Gemara instead says, Ella rather midichsiv, from the fact that it's written in the pasuk make ish v'meis mos yumas. It says if he strikes his fellow man and he kills him by striking him, he will surely die. And it's also written in the pasuk ova eva hiko biyado v'yamos. It also says over there that he's going to strike the person in hatred and he's going to die. So shmami, no, you see from both of these examples, kol heicha deika hakostam. Anytime it says one strikes in general without saying the word misa, without referencing the fact that the person died, so lav miso, then the assumption is that it's not involving death, it's just involving striking the person, and so therefore we can assume that when it says make aviv v'imo but doesn't mention that the father or mother died, it simply means striking one's father or one's mother. And the Gemara continues, v'itzrech lemichtav make ish, v'itzrech lemichtav kol make nefesh. The pasuk needs to say make ish, and it also needs to say kol make nefesh, even though both psukim seem to be talking about the same thing, they're talking about murdering a person, but you need both of those. Because if the pasuk said make ish v'meis and he dies, you strike a person and he dies. Havamina ish de bar mitzvah in katan lo. I would think a man who's an adult who's a bar mitzvah, yes, but it doesn't apply to killing a minor. Because of rachmana kol make nefesh. That's why the pasuk says kol make nefesh. Even striking a minor, that's considered the same kind of murder. Because of rachmana kol make nefesh, and if the pasuk only said make nefesh, havamina afilu nefolim afilu ben shmona. I would think even if you have a non-viable baby, it's not going to survive anyhow. Or even, let's say, a person kills a ben shmona, that's a baby that's born after 8 months, also assume that that's not going to survive, and so I would think that would also be included. So tzrichi, so that's why it says make ish, to say it has to be a child, you're striking a child, killing a child that is able to survive on his own. But the Gemara continues, ve'ema afal gav de lo avid bechabura, but why don't we say that one strikes his father and his mother, you don't have to even make a wound, even simply striking the father or the mother should be enough for the death penalty. Alama Tanan, why do we learn in the Mishnah, Hamake of Avimo eno chayiv at sheyasa ben chabur? It says if one strikes his father or his mother, he's not liable until he creates a wound. Where do we know that from? And the Gemara says to that, Amar Krotz, because the pasuk says make adam u make behema. The pasuk talks about striking a man and striking an animal. Ma make behema David b'chabura. Just like when you strike an animal, we're talking about with a wound. Techsiv bo nefesh, because it uses the word nefesh over there. U make nefesh behema yishalmena. Af make adam David chabura. So too, when we talk about striking a person, we're talking about striking them in a fashion where a wound is created. But the Gemara still asks, Maskef lo Rav Yirmi, or Rav Yirmi asks on this, Elameat, according to that, Hikachisha ba'avonim, let's say a person, he weakens an animal by striking it with stones, but doesn't cause a wound. Hachanami de lo mechayiv, are you going to say that the person is not liable to pay for damages in that case? Of course there are damages in that case. By an animal, it's not only if there's an actual wound that draws blood. And so the Gemara instead says, Elemeino inyan lenefesh behema. If you're not going to apply the word nefesh, what we mean is as follows. When it says make nefesh behema, you don't apply that by an animal, because because it's actually true. If the person weakened the animal with stones, that also would be enough. You don't have to actually draw blood in order to be liable to monetary payment. And so therefore, we actually apply that pasuk to nefesh adam. There we're talking specifically about drawing blood, about creating a wound. But the Gemara continues according to that, Ela Hekesha Lamali, but according to that, so what do we do with a comparison? We talk about a comparison between Make Adam and Make Behema. What's that comparison for? And the Gemara says to that, L'chidatanya devei Chizkiya. It's what was taught in the yeshiva of Chizkiya. And Rashi explains, L'nefesh Adam, again we should apply the pasuk to Nefesh Adam, Dahainu Aviv, meaning his father. We're going to learn from the pasuk of Umake Nefesh Behema, Diafa Gavdilo Be'inan Misa, Chabura Mia Be'inan. Even though you don't need to have actually killed his father or his mother, but a wound is required in order to get the death penalty. And so then the Gemara asked, if that's what we're learning from Make Nefesh Behema, so Ela Hekesha Lamali, so what do we learn from the comparison between Behema and Adam, the Iskish Make Adam Lamake Behema, because again, Make Adam and Make Behema are compared to one another, Bechad Kran, one pasuk, all via laft lay me'imeno inyan. If we're already learning it from the fact that we can't apply the Nefesh Behema, we can't say it only applies to an animal where an animal has to have a wound, because by the animal you're going to pay even if there's no wound. So we said imeno inyan, we applied it again to the case of striking one's father. So then again, what do we do with the comparison between Make Adam and Make Behema? And the Gemara answered, L'chidatanya devei Chizkiya. It's for the teaching of devei Chizkiya, B'Bava Kama v'Aminiach. This is in Bava Kama. Leftor chayve misa shogun min atashlumin. It's to say that by chayve misos shogegin, by cases where there would have been a death penalty on purpose, but let's say it's done by mistake, we're trying to say there's an exemption from payment there, and we learn that out from this comparison. Ma Make Behema lo chilakta b'v'chulu. Just like we don't make that distinction by Make Behema, so too again by chayve misos shogegin. But the Gemara continues, Hanicha l'man de islay tana devei Chizkiya. That's good according to the one who holds of the teaching of devei Chizkiya. El l'man de leslay tana devei Chizkiya, but according to the one who doesn't hold of the teaching of devei Chizkiya. So again, back to the question, Hekesha Lamali, what do we need the comparison for between Make Behema and Make Adam? And the Gemara suggests a different answer, Ma Make Behema l'rafua pater. Just like if somebody would strike an animal, but it would be for the purpose of healing the animal, so then he would be exempt. Af Make Adam l'rafua pater. So too by Make Adam, if he's doing it in order to heal, he is going to be exempt. And Rashi explains Hanicha, that's good again according to the one who holds of devei Chizkiya. This is a plux of Rav Yochanan and Rav Shimon Lakish. That's actually a machlokas between Rav Yochanan and Reish Lakish b'chsubis and Meseches ksubis. And so then the Gemara said, ma'amake behema l'refuah, if a person would strike an animal for healing purposes, could go and makiz dam, let's say for example bloodletting, pater min hatashlumin, there would be no need to pay, a person would be exempt from paying damages, sharei lo hizika, that's not considered a situation of damage. Af make adam dahainu aviv, so too by striking a person, meaning striking his father, l'refuah pater, if he does that for refuah purposes, he's exempt mimisa, there is no death penalty, v'afagav dechaburahi, even though that is a wound, but still again the person will be exempt because it was for the purpose of refuah. And the Gemara continues, the boilhu, because it was a question to them as follows, ben ma'u shiyakiz dam lo aviv, what about a son bloodletting for his father? Is he allowed to do that? That's again for refuah purposes. Rav Masna says, v'yahavta l'reacha kamocha, it says you love your friend like yourself. And Rashi explains, v'yahavta l'reacha kamocha lo huzru Yisrael mi la'asos l'chavreim el adavar she'eino chavetz la'asos li'atzmo. The warning is only against something that they wouldn't do for themselves. By makiz dam, that's something you would do for yourself. So therefore that is okay. Rav Dimi Bar Chinana says, Make Adam and Make Behema. We learn it from the comparison between Make Adam and Make Behema. Make Behema l'refuah pater, just like Make Behema for refuah purposes is pater. Af Make Adam l'refuah pater. So to Make Adam l'refuah is going to be pater. And the Gemara continues, Rav lo shavik livrei lemishka le silva. Rav did not allow his son to take a thorn out from his skin because he was afraid that his son would end up wounding him and violate striking his father and wounding his father. And Marbrei de Ravina also lo shavik livrei lemiftach le kevasa. He didn't allow his son to open a blister, to pop a blister for him. Dil mochavel, because again maybe it would cause a wound. V'havalei shigagas sister, and then he would commit that violation even though it was b'shogeg, but he would commit a violation that would have been a chiyav misa. He would commit that b'shogeg. He didn't want his son to commit that violation. And the Gemara continues, if so, acher nami, if so, another person also shouldn't do that. A person shouldn't go and take a thorn out from his friend or pop a blister from his friend, because again, you're not allowed to wound. A person is not allowed to wound another Jew. And the Gemara says, acher shigagas lav, by the case of somebody else, so it's a mistake where if it would have been done on purpose, it would have just been a lav, it would have just been a violation of a losase. But by his son, shigas chenek, it's a mistake by something which if you would have done it on purpose, it's a violation that carries the punishment of chenek, of strangulation. That's much more strict. That's why they did not allow it, again, when it came to the situation of their sons. And the Gemara continues, but what about that which we learned in the Mishnah, machat shel yad? Let's say you have a needle. The needle is generally used for sewing, but we say in Mesechet Shabbos, in Hilchas Shabbos, you're allowed to carry it because litol boas hakotz, it does have a use for Shabbos. You can use it to take out a splinter. So leichosh dil machavel, so we should be concerned that maybe it's going to cause a wound. V'havelah shigagas skila, and that would be a mistake, but it's something that involves skila. If you cause a wound on purpose, that could be a punishment of stoning, and so that should not be something that you should be doing with the machat shel yad, with the needle. And the Gemara answers to that, Hasam mekalkel, who over there, that's actually considered mekalkel. It's considered a destructive, something you're doing for a destructive purpose, and in such a situation, you'd be completely pater. It's not a concern. The Gemara continues, Hanichel ma'adamer mekalkel pater. Well, that's good according to the one who says that destructive actions are pater on Shabbos. El l'ma'adamer chayiv, but according to the one who says destructive actions are chayiv on Shabbos, ma'ikol amemer. So what are you going to say? And the Gemara says to that, Man shamat le'damer mekalkel b'chabur chayiv. Who's the one that says that if you make a wound in a destructive fashion that you're liable on Shabbos? That's Rabbi Shimon. That's Rabbi Shimon. And Rashi explains mekalkel, who again is destructive. V'chola mekalkel in peturin b'chilul Shabbos. By actions that are destructive, they're all exempt when it comes to Shabbos. The melechas machsheves ksiv, because by Shabbos it has to be melechas machsheves. Vein mechayiv mekalkel elo Rabbi Shimon. Only Rabbi Shimon says mekalkel is chayiv on Shabbos. Umekalkel b'chabura Rabbi Shimon nami lo mechayiv. But it happens to be that by mekalkel b'chabura, as we're about to say in the next daf, Rabbi Shimon says you're not chayiv by mekalkel b'chabura. Elo b'miskaven lekach dahavit tzarich lechavol. Only in a case where you had intention that you needed the wound. Aval hanotel coats, but if a person is taking away a splinter, ein sarach lechavol, then he doesn't need the wound itself. Over etzono lo yechabel, so therefore that's not considered beritzono. It's not his will. And Rabbi Shimon also says that one is not chayiv for that case. And we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Pei Hey Amud Aleph.